Let's talk about the Al Aqsa Mosque. A couple hundred Palestinians were arrested Friday during a morning prayer service for Ramadan. 135 were injured. Israeli security forces spent about an hour lobbing tear gas into the Al Aqsa Mosque, which I think is the third holiest site in Muslim religion. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's a sacred spot. The Of course, the two holy places in the Arabian Peninsula, what is today rather grotesquely, in my opinion, called Saudi Arabia, Medina and Mecca, take pride of place because they're part of the objects of pilgrimage during the Hajj that takes place in about 3 months or so. But Jerusalem was the first direction towards which Muslims prayed. And there is also the tradition of the night journey where Muhammad journeyed and met all the other prophets. The Dome of the Rock, in the famous gold domed structure on the top of what is thought of as the Temple Mount, where also the Masjid al-Aqsa, the Aqsa Mosque, is located, is supposed to be the foundation stone of the temple, and also at the same time is thought to be the stone from which he made this mystical journey and visited the heavens and the levels of hell, which was in fact actually an inspiration for Dante's Divine Comedy, is this idea of visiting, going on a kind of journey, a spiritual or mystical journey to visit and see the condition of those who were pious and rewarded in the levels of heaven, but also how they will be, subject to all kinds of torments in hell. That vision that Dante had in the Divine Comedy is thought to be inspired by a translation from Arabic into the vernacular Italian of Muhammad's journey, that it provided inspiration. So the point is, yes, that Jerusalem is a holy city for Jews, for Christians, and for Muslims. And unfortunately, it has been a site of contestation to have a kind of religious national sovereignty over the control of these holy places. And that is leading to, I wouldn't say that it itself is leading to, I would say that the political situation exacerbates these religious identities and the investments that people have in religious sovereignty and control over their holy shrines and sanctuaries. And we see the same thing happening for Christians. This is often characterized as just a matter of Jews and Muslims, but next weekend will be the Orthodox Easter. So Easter for Roman Catholics and those in the Western churches was celebrated just this last weekend, Easter Sunday. We're now on Easter Monday. But in the Orthodox churches, which includes Ethiopia, Egypt, the Copts of Egypt, the Armenians, Russian Orthodox, Ukrainian Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox, and Greek Orthodox, that conclave of church community celebrates Easter this coming weekend. And they have a very special ceremony that takes place in Jerusalem at the Church of the Resurrection, or the Holy Sepulchre, as it's known in the Latin West. On Saturday, there is believed that a holy fire descends and relights relights the candles or the lights in the tomb of Christ as a kind of miracle that symbolizes the resurrection after being entombed, the resurrection on the third day. And they have a whole liturgical performance that involves anticipating this divine fire coming. And now that means that it brings a lot of people in for Easter services. And this year, there have been restrictions put on to limit the number to only 1,000 visitors. And the Orthodox Church itself has said they are not going to abide by these limitations, and they've complained about these. And so what we have is, a variety of communities that are, sort of struggling to assert their public performance of their religious identity and their religious practices in these spaces. And it's leading to, of course, exacerbating conflict in this period. And I think we're at a very interesting moment because it's Passover. Passover is, of course, Easter is based, to some extent on the Passover.
The Last Supper was.
That's right. The Last Supper and the events of the Last Supper are, a Passover feast. So there's an intimate connection. They don't always perfectly overlap because of different ways of calculating. This year they do very closely. And likewise, it's the month of Ramadan. And so you have Muslims going to the mosque in the early morning in large numbers. And so these religious enthusiasms, of course, create, potentially, security issues because it brings so many people out. I mean, I recall that even, the Crusaders, for example, in the 12th century outlawed the Friday prayer in Nablus because they were just, concerned about hundreds and thousands of the inhabitants of the city coming together, listening to some, kind of speech in a language they don't understand, and perhaps it leading to, revolt, insurrection, or throwing off of, the Crusader control. So bringing out a lot of people and channeling their kind of emotions in this way is seen as potentially dangerous. And so we see the Israeli authorities are quite concerned about.
What was the cause to lob tear gas? How do you justify lobbing tear gas into a mosque and arresting people? What was the probable cause? They were Palestinians.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, it provides, I think these are performances. So in addition to the religious performance, these are performances that are taking place in a multi-religious context for a multi-religious audience of asserting one's religious identity vis-a-vis, other religious communities. And in fact, actually, you could say in some ways, that's the whole purpose of the Dome of the Rock being built when it was built in 682. I think it was started by the Umayyad Caliph of the time, Abdul Malik. He wanted to build a monumental religious structure that announced essentially on this high spot in a place that was revered by other religious communities as well, to announce that Muslim sovereignty had come and was going to stay now, that this is the era of this new dispensation and that it's superseding the previous ones. So in my own research, I've actually seen how there were stories that circulated of how, the church steeple of the Church of the Resurrection or other structures were higher than the Dome of the Rock, and that this angered the caliph. And so the caliph tried to, have this removed and cut down so that, his religion's monumental collective cathedral mosque would be higher, and that miraculously wasn't able to topple it. It just would keep coming back. And so what these stories are about are, responding to the loss of sovereignty. And in fact, actually, that miracle of the Church of the Holy Fire coming into the Church of the Resurrection that is being anticipated for this coming weekend is, in a way, a Christian miracle that only seems to have emerged after Muslims conquered the city. In other words, it's a miracle that says, okay, you may be in control of the city now, you're ruling it, but Christ still reigns supreme, and he's going to show this, that he is still sovereign. Even though we're not politically sovereign, he's sovereign. And so this is kind of what we're dealing with, is the way in which there are performances of one's identity in this atmosphere of sovereignty, of religious sovereignty, having its own politics. Now, I wouldn't say that's the source of the conflict, not at all, but this certainly exacerbates why at this moment we're seeing particularly friction, just as we did last year at right around this time.
I
is
see.
because of the confluence of these religious performances, of people being brought out in large numbers for communal and collective revitalizing of their identities. That is seen as dangerous. And so there's a contest going on.